good evening, good morning, depending on where you are in the world today. Welcome to Digital Dialogue, where today we are going to be talking about leadership coaching and transformation. My name is 𝗲𝗲𝘀𝗀𝗏, and I am going to be your host today. I am a longtime IT exec. For those of you that know me, you're tired of hearing the same old story. More recently, Chief Experience Officer, so my focus has been around the customer. And I am an Institute Fellow, which is really why I am here today. I love everything about transformation, talking about it, and getting new expert advice from the experts we have joining me today for our dialogue. So I am going to introduce our two wonderful experts, Mimi Brooks and Renee Sonnefeld. Hi, Mimi. How are you? Renee, nice to see you. Welcome. So glad that you guys are joining us today. If you wouldn't mind me, how about a quick intro so everyone knows who you are and what you do?
So much. Hi, Jessica. So nice to be here. I'm Mimi Brooks. I'm the CEO of Logical Design Solutions. We're a management consulting firm focused on organizational transformation, and I'm also a leadership coach.
Renee?
Yeah, good morning. My name is Renee Sonnefeld. I'm a leadership coach. I work globally with entrepreneurs, executives, with teams, athletes, and enterprise families, helping them unlock their full potential and sharpen their performance. My professional journey spans senior leadership roles in Fortune 500 and family-owned companies. I worked and lived across 4 continents. I'm currently in Los Angeles, but for the last 21 years, I've called Uruguay in South America my home for my soulmate and my 5 children. It's a beautiful country where I also serve as the Honorary Consul General for the Netherlands. And alongside my work as a coach, I teach leadership at 3 universities in the United States, and soon as well at the National Institute for Science and Technology in Maryland. And coaching it for me, it's my path. It's much more about achieving results, about aligning ambitions with values and creating meaningful impact and building legacies that last for my clients. So back to you, Jessica.
So we're going to dig into that. I think we've got the right people here. So to the audience, so glad that you are with us. A little bit of a housekeeping item. You guys are participants in this conversation, not just Mimi, Renee, and myself. So please put your questions, thoughts in the chat, and we will try to weave those in throughout our conversation today. I think probably what we should make clear up front, what is our goal today? And our goal is really to explore and dig into how leadership coaching plays a role in successful digital transformation. And I probably, just for my own sanity, want to say that up front, let's think of digital transformation more as business transformation. I think Mimi and Renee, you probably would agree with me on this one, that we're really talking about the whole organization with the technology as an enabler in that. So kind of looking at this in a much broader way than just how things affect the IT group. So with that, let's lay some foundation. And Mimi, I'm going to come to you first. If you wouldn't mind, can you help us understand why and how you would tie leadership coaching to transformational success? In some ways, they seem like 2 different topics, but how do they come together?
Well, it really kind of starts with what you were just saying a moment ago, Jess, and that is, I think most of us know by now, 15 or so years into digital transformation, depending on how you count your industrial revolutions, as I like to say, we've realized that digital transformation really is wholesale business transformation, strategic transformation, ops transformation, and most importantly, organization transformation of our organizational systems and structures. So if we think that our hierarchical, siloed, command and control organizational systems and structures are going to have to necessarily change in order for us to meet the challenges and opportunities afforded by digital transformation, or possible anyways, if we make good decisions here, we start seeing that in the realm of organizational transformation, one of the most important structures is the leadership structure. So digital transformation to organizational transformation to leadership transformation. And I think the context of leadership transformation is trying to develop new leadership abilities that we don't have today. So how do we think about, developing the capabilities that leaders need to lead this new breed of enterprise that we're talking about? And this is where coaching comes in, because effective leadership is going to be about how we show up, how we inspire, how we engage, how we create energy and trust and commitment, especially in running strategies that tend to be anticipating putting the organization someplace that they've never been before. So there's a tremendous amount of trust that needs to be built. And as importantly, leaders are going to need 100% of the energy of the workforce to co-create that future with them. So organizational transformation, to new leadership models and systems, to new capabilities, to coaching as a really effective tool for helping to build the new leadership capabilities that we need.
And, I love that. Thank you for that description, because, so many conversations are around how we need to teach and engage our employees through all of this. But that only works, I guess, if you've got this leadership that is also been coached and trained. I mean, Renee, any thoughts from you on that element of it?
Thank you so much, Jessica and Mimi. Just to add that, you spoke about the many industrial revolutions. I personally don't believe that in the history changes has come as fast as in the digital area, or maybe we even should call it today the artificial intelligence era, right? And changes, especially ongoing change, is not easy, as the success of transformation relies heavily on the people driving it. And it depends on leaders who can inspire, align, and adapt. And that's where the leadership coaching comes in. What we're tying together here is simply simple but powerful. The success of digital transformation depends on leadership transformation. And you can have the best technology, but if the leaders aren't equipped to inspire trust, if they can't foster collaboration and adapt quickly, the transformation won't stick. And that's where coaching becomes the bridge. It's where leaders build the resilience to handle uncertainty, the emotional intelligence to truly connect with their teams, and the clarity to turn a chaotic process into a shared vision.
Great. Well, we're going to get, I'm sorry.
Yes. No,
we'll get into that in depth, and I really, I absolutely want to come back to that piece of it. Before we do that, and I really want to dig more on the coaching side of things, but before we do that, Mimi, I'd like to put this on you a little bit. You work with some of the largest global organizations in the world, and I would love for you to share with the audience, from your perspective, some of the challenges in transformation that you have seen. And then I think, Renee, I want to flip back to you. Let's pull coaching into that as soon as she sort of lays that down. So the challenges that you've seen, I mean, I think for me and the audience here, we probably have a good sense of what a lot of those are, but can you sort of put that, kind of button that up for us?
And I'd love to hear, from the audience too in the chat on this. So just what I've seen is that the challenge for leaders, I think, is that there's not a lot of either or things that they need to do, but there's a lot of and things. It's a lot of balls that need to go up in the air and they need to stay there. So, the challenging ideas are, we need to get operational excellence and innovation happening at the same time, right? We need to do what's good for the business and good for people. We need to make sure that our short-term plans and activities and what we're funding and spending, incredibly important resources on, especially our time and attention of our human resources, is fully aligned to our long-term plan. What we can't do is to have a short-term strategy that delivers short-term results at the same time that we're running a different and not necessarily aligned long-term strategy that's somehow going to create a future that doesn't exist today. So the challenge, I think, for leaders is to make those work together, a short-term plan and a long-term plan, good for people and good for the business. All of those things have got to be true. And I feel like one way that challenge gets addressed, Jess, is to set a long-term strategy that really is focused on imagining and then right to left, creating the future by what we do today. And I think one of the big challenges for leaders is not only what we do, but what we need to stop doing in order to have the capacity, attention, and bandwidth from our people to take this journey from here to there. So that's what it looks like to me.
I think what you just said there is important too. I just had this conversation with another CIO, and she had made this statement to me that one of the things that she took her role was really going through what to stop doing. What to stop doing. And that takes some bravery, because it's hard to do that. I mean,
Right.
she actually pointed to ERP as like, this is not really driving business success. So we need to stop putting all of our focus on this and go over here. And that probably, kind of, heresy, if you will, to most of us. But I think it goes to what you're saying. You've got to understand the balance between the two.
Yeah, exactly. And, Jess, we've run those strategies as managers for a long time, right? They're efficiency based, they're building scale. They made perfect sense for the management challenges that we were at before. But now we're less about problem solving activities and more about, future building activities. It's a different mindset for leaders, I think.
And this is actually a good place, Renee, for you to offer us some thoughts on this. I mean, okay, so those are the challenges. We know that the future looks very different, and then we know our behavior has to be different. So I'm assuming this is where the coaching leadership fits in, but explain to us how that happens. How does coaching help address these challenges that Mimi just laid out for us?
Thanks so much. And just to follow up on that, let me just take one step back to answer your question. And it ties very much into what Mimi said before. So nowadays, organizational change, we all agree on that, is as inevitable as death and taxes, right? And its key is to understand that organizational change fundamentally relies on individual change. Simply put, if individuals within an organization don't change, the organization itself cannot change. So organizational change is individual change. And change itself, for each of us, it's deeply personal. For those on the receiving end, it's an emotional roller coaster. We deal with uncertainty, resistance, fear, right? And that's where so many of our change efforts, they falter. Leaders, they must understand that organizational change isn't just a rational decision. It's an emotional journey for everyone involved. So resistance to change from the people in the organization is rarely about defiance, it's about fear. And when we work with organizations, we call this the 4 C's. The C of confidence. People can ask themselves, can I handle this change? Can I adapt? Of competence, do I have the skills overcoming this change? Control, am I losing my authority or influence? And comfort, because it's about our natural resistance to leave our comfort zone. Why leave the familiar for the unknown, we may ask ourselves. So when people feel uneasy or resistant to change, simply telling them to stop feeling uncomfortable isn't going to help them, right? We need to help them explore the emotions underneath and understand what's driving those feelings. So ultimately, all change, even large organizational change, is personal. To help an organization truly adapt, you have to engage with the individuals, coaching them through their fears so they're also able to grow and adjust.
So I want to just put kind of another layer on that right there. We talk a lot about the people, what we need to do for our people to help them through that. And I think what we're talking about here today too is we can't forget that the leadership all the way up to the CEO is equally I guess, dealing with those 4 C's, if you will, right? And I think that's part of what this conversation is really about, is it not? That the leadership themselves can sometimes be, as much as they say they want the change and know in their intellect that, yeah, we need to make these changes, but to actually do it feels very differently. Mimi or Renee, do you agree, disagree?
I do. I really agree with that. And I think just what we have with that is this idea that in transformation, leaders really need to go first, because we're talking about going into uncharted water here, and to have people trust you to take them into that water and get them someplace, good and safe and worthwhile, and returning value, to them personally and to the organization at large. So leaders, getting them comfortable first to run these strategies and to establish, the trust and commitment and credibility with people, not just to embark on a new journey, but to pivot in the middle of the journey, because these journeys are all about progressive learning, feedback and things that enable us to take the next step after we've taken the first one, because we've learned and we've explored and we've figured out what to do next. So that's really quite a difficult journey to get people to excitedly come on with you. So leaders have to go first. And we have to get leaders comfortable in managing in these complex, ambiguous, volatile environments, if you will. And a whole bunch of that is about how leaders show up and the capabilities that leaders bring, to ask people to go on the journey and also to participate in ways that we're all co-creating the future. It's a big ask, but to think that workers don't want to change, I think more often that's workers don't know exactly what you're asking them, to do. What is the journey you want me to go on with you? And then I can make a good choice for myself and for you on whether that's a good fit for me, but someone's got to be clear about, let me tell you what this looks like. And that story, that compelling idea needs to come with high credibility from leaders.
Well, I want to talk about coaching and leadership coaching in particular. And Renee, I had this conversation with Mimi yesterday, so she's heard this before, but I think I would love to kind of pull you both into this. So when I hear leadership, and maybe it's just me, but I have a suspicion that those of us that are participating in this dialogue today have gone through some sort of leadership coaching in some form in our life. And certainly mine goes back a number of years as I age myself here. But if I look back at when I went through leadership coaching, it was very much about my organization provided me this to make me a better manager and to make my peer over here a better manager and my peer over here a better manager. But we were becoming better in our own silos, right? That's to me what I think of when I think of leadership coaching. But the two of you look at this very differently, and your approach is most certainly not a siloed approach. Can you explain and help us understand the systematic approach that you view leadership coaching to be? Mimi, I'm going to start with you, and then certainly Renee, please jump in.
So I think to your point, Jess, that the idea of leaders going at it alone in any context is not a good idea. And it's kind of an anti-pattern, to the wholesale change that we're talking about. So the leadership system and finding these survivable, sustainable ideas of leadership common interests, and they're more naturally horizontal ideas, vision, purpose, net return to people and to the organization, the greater good. These are ideas that we get leaders to buy into so that we can move shoulder to shoulder, down this journey and not fracture and fragment the organization in our old silos in ways that we're, running 5 different strategies under one umbrella organization. So the leadership system, the leadership structure, it needs to establish a thick idea of enterprise common ideas, cultural ideas, purpose ideas, vision ideas, major funded initiative ideas, what the future looks like ideas, how we're going to contribute to all of our stakeholders, not just our shareholders, et cetera, et cetera. That's got to be bought into by the leadership team across the board. And then we can look at, how we lay other systems into that system and have them work going forward. For example, our relationship with our workers and people. So I think it is a system. And I think it plays a little bit, Renee, to what you were saying a moment ago, that it's about individuals operating in a system willingly, that they're here, for all the good and right reasons, because we've been entirely transparent with them on what we think that journey looks like as best as we see it.
Yeah, Renee,
what do you think?
Yeah, please react, because I just made this statement here, and you're probably like, oh, that's not leadership coaching. So tell us, what is it?
No, absolutely. I think we're on the right track here, and coaching as a system is uniquely powerful during times of transformational change, because it addresses not just the technical challenges, but also the emotional and the human aspects of leadership. And we call this in coaching, we call this the adaptive challenges. And maybe if you allow me, I'd like to use a metaphor for explaining coaching. And it's like having a compass when the terrain is unfamiliar, and not just pointing out the direction, but also helping you navigate the unexpected storms along the way. And I remember I once worked with a CEO, and let's just, for the purpose of this exercise, call him Ted, who was navigating his company through a massive restructuring. And he came to our first session visibly, with weight on his shoulders. He described the change as an impossible mountain to climb. And the uncertainty was crushing him. And his team was looking for him for clarity that he didn't feel he had. So this is where the magic of coaching stepped in. And one of the most powerful tools, and now we start talking about the tools, was used, was reframing. So for Ted, what initially felt like a roadblock, a decreasing budget, transformed into a creative constraint. And through our work together, he began to see the opportunities to focus on innovation and tapping into his team's resourcefulness and uncovering his team's hidden strengths. And by reframing and shifting his perspective, he found solutions that not only addressed the immediate challenges, but also sparked long-term growth. And then a second skill that we use in coaching, it's the power of questioning, right? It isn't about providing answers, it's about uncovering them, And so we ask some hard questions. What's truly at stake for you in this change? What assumptions are you holding into that might be limiting your options? And these aren't easy questions for leaders to answer, but they revealed the real source of what limited him, and that was the fear of losing the trust of his team. And once we serviced that, he was able to address it head on. And then we added active listening, right? So for the leader, for Ted, simply having a space to process his thoughts without judgment, for him it was a game changer. And in this rapid fire pace of leadership, such spaces are rare. And as he shared his fears and hopes, I could see his confidence almost like rebuilding. He described it as finally having been heard for the first time in months. And then finally, of course, there's accountability in the process, right? Coaching doesn't stop with epiphanies, but with new insights. And in coaching, we turn those insights into actions. So we mapped out clear steps to engage his team and prioritize initiatives and rebuild trust. And that's how we work in this coaching process. At its best, it just doesn't help leaders to survive disruptions. It helps them thrive through it.
Well, I think, you said a couple of things there that I just want to kind of come back to. I think as a leader, often we feel like we are supposed to have all the answers. And I know for myself, I've had this terrible habit of just jumping in and not listening. And I would say my career spans a discipline of over and over again trying to remember, I need to listen first, because most often my team has the better answer, right? I think that what you just described almost sounds to me like this leader found that by stepping back and allowing himself to have that grace to step back, he actually got more insight because his people had some perspective that perhaps was helpful. Am I reading that correctly?
Yeah, I love that what you said, and exactly, it's about stepping back. It's slowing down to be able to speed up. And whenever we as leaders, we think about communication, we think about it in the context of telling something, of saying something, of verbalizing an idea. Well, actually, the most powerful tool in communication is listening. And listening empowers your team. Listening creates connection. Listening builds trust. And this is all about it. You know, why should we as leader be an island and lead the organization? If you have great people, you have smart people in your team, they went to the best universities, you pay them tons of money. Let them get there. They will. And so coaching is very much about helping leaders to let go, actually.
So I want to thank you so much for that, Renee. I want to kind of take us to another little bit of a side place in this conversation. And Mimi, you mentioned this a few minutes ago, so I'm going to circle back to something you started to talk about, but I want to dig in a little bit more. You know, with transformation, part of this whole concept is we create these big, you know, bold agendas, these strategic plans that are big and broad. And let's assume for a minute that we've done a great job of communicating all of that. And we've got everybody built, you know, around the team built into supporting that, and everyone's on board. So we think we're ready to go. We've got this big plan. But then there's the everyday that sort of slips into place. And the short-term, you know, initiatives and emergencies and all of that starts to play. And typically what seems to happen, and I think this is a big part of why our transformations do struggle so much, is that we get kind of fixated on the short term and the long-term big picture. Oh yeah, that's great, but we just don't have time or resource to do that. We got to do this stuff first. How do you, Mimi, if you wouldn't mind jumping in on this first, how do you recommend balancing the short term and the long term without giving up on both of them?
Yeah, it kind of goes back to that thing we were talking about before, right, Jess? That's what you're pointing to.
Yes.
Jess, I think that the short-term ideas that I've seen, I'm interested in what you think too, tend to look like things like chasing technology, now because we're afraid of being left behind, the idea that we just need to start automating something. Sometimes it doesn't help when we say, pick a use case, any use case, and let's see, if we can make some progress against that. Because all of those individual activities, if you will, have no natural connection. There's just literally no connection to how they're going to feed our long-term vision. So I think the challenge is, how do we get from vision to strategy to execution and keep all of those things in alignment so that everything that we're executing on has a place in our strategy and has an important place in our vision, because this goes to the spending our resources, time, human effort, IT budgets, et cetera, on the things that are truly going to provide us with the long-term growth that we're looking for as a result of this. So I think that having an approach to transformation that includes, importantly, the governance that glues those things together to make sure that all the initiatives are initiatives that feed our short-term needs potentially, but they contribute to our long-term needs. Because the tough decisions that you were talking about is to stop activities today that are seemingly of high priority, but that are inexplicable in terms of the contribution that they're really making to the long-term strategy that we're running. it's painful. I mean, we worked with a CEO in a public utility company who literally put 200 digital projects on ice because we couldn't figure out, exactly how those projects, while interesting projects, really had much to do with his critical path to the future, which he felt, very concerned, about navigating the organization through. And it wasn't until we came up with a governance process to ensure that all of those activities, and very few of them made it, really had a place, in our plans, for supporting our long-term strategy. So I think it's a vision, strategy, execution alignment that needs to be established and maintained, Jess. And then the question is, that's why that leadership agreement across the organization becomes so important. We can't spend in the verticals. We've got to invest in the horizontals.
And this goes back to no more silos. We've got to do this as one unit, which is not traditionally how we've done things. So it's not natural. And I assume, Renee, this is where you would say, you would step in and help the team understand how to address that. I would guess that I'm hoping you've got some great examples, or an example of where you've been able to do that. I'm putting you on the spot, I know, but.
Yeah, so many examples, but I'm watching here through my hotel window, and I see the Santa Monica mountain range, and just to add on what Mpho said about leadership, and so I like to use a metaphor. I love metaphors, so I apologize for that. And imagine a leader standing at the edge of a canyon, and on one side is the bold vision for the future, the transformational change that they know their organization needs to thrive. And on the other side of the canyon, there's the pressing demands of the here and the now, the quarterly goals and the stakeholder expectations and the relentless pace of challenges of daily operations, right? Now, how I see coaching, it becomes the bridge, right? That helps leader to cross that canyon with purpose and clarity and strengths. And it helps leaders, or it equips leaders actually, to balance bold agendas with sustainability and maybe short-term results by building a foundation of resilience and psychological safety and alignment with purpose. And that's so important, that kind of that resilience part that you need to have as a leader to help your organization going through that change, and that resilience to resist short-term results and build on the long-term vision. But then there's this other aspect, and that's the psychological safety. And that's a phrase that we hear a lot nowadays, but we often don't fully know or appreciate how to unpack it. And especially within the wider organization, the teams, right? So let me break that down for 1 second, the psychological safety. It's for me, it's a secret ingredient to high-performing teams. And it's the difference between a group of people showing up to work and a team showing up to win. So coaching equips leaders to create environments where people feel truly safe to share their ideas, to voice their concerns, and even feel safe to disagree. How cool is that? And why does it matter? Because innovation, the group innovation, thrives in those spaces where people feel heard. That's what it's about. And so there's something else that we like to avoid so often: conflict. Coaching teaches that conflict isn't an enemy, it's an opportunity. Conflict and effective, sustainable teamwork are not mutually exclusive. Let's get that right, people. Healthy conflict, when guided by psychological safety, becomes a catalyst for innovation. And I call this conflict transformation, the art of turning friction into fuel for progress.
Ooh, I love that. We gotta do something with that right there. I love that. That's a great tagline. So, what I'd love to do at this point, and we've talked kind of theoretically about how, or academically about all of this, but I'd like to take us down the road of tangible examples and reality. And so, Mimi, I'm going to kick this off with you. Can you share with us, again, I know you are going through this process as Renee is with some of the biggest names out there and also smaller companies as well. So a variety of different types of environments. Do you have an example where there was actually what you would call a profound transformation that actually came to fruition because the organizational environment and the leadership environment aligned? Do you have something you can share with us? Like what was the scenario, if you have one, and how did it actually happen? So not the theory, but what was the actual execution of making this work?
It's such a good question. So Jess, I think that my favorite examples, my favorite work is when we are successful in organizational transformation, almost from the front line to the corporate office and then back again. My most gratifying work is seeing transformation improve the work and the lives of people on the front line, and there's lots of work that we've done there with public utility companies, for example, with transportation companies, for example, with, energy companies at refinery locations, for example, where we've gone in with very senior level support, C-level for sure, often the CEO, trying to operationalize their strategy of transformation by aligning the leadership team and making sure that that alignment trickles out and back to the front line so that everybody in the organization understands the why. Why are we doing this? Why is this imperative to the business? And what's expected from people, and what will people gain by being a part of this new purpose and this new game plan? So, the public utility company that we worked for that gave me access, my team access to the whole front line of public utility workers, and we traveled with them and we went on the road with them. And as we reimagined their work, and they went from, tribal knowledge of small little teams out on the road together to having access to anyone in the company that they needed access to. The original designers, the engineers, their leadership, as we transformed frontline work and people saw the value that technology could bring in making their work more meaningful, more human, safer. I love the safer idea of more human work on the front line, and their leaders in alignment, shoulder to shoulder, not parsing them across the organization, not managing fiefdoms, but really committed to the interconnected nature of the business going forward, and our stronger common ideas than our, unique departmental or foundational ideas, if you will. And I think that when we transform businesses like that, it's so incredibly rewarding. We did work with drones and AI in disaster recovery and relief, and the frontline people that didn't have to go in quite so quickly to really dangerous situations without having that work assessed for them first. Hugely gratifying. Same thing with, how we think about getting knowledge to the front line, if you will, knowledge that comes from anywhere in the organization. So, all of those things that truly improve the work of work, that bring together this idea of people work and people smart doing the leadership, people work redesigned. I love that.
And I think,
yes.
John says so.
Totally. Oh, John, I have to tell you, all my cards to you on this one. You have got to go out and talk to them. They really know how the real work is getting done. It's not often how people think it gets done that are sitting in corporate offices. And I find these people not in any way, generally speaking, unwilling to change. I find them confused about what it is that we're asking them to do. and if we could just make it clear and make it, honest and transparent, and help us get from here to there, it moves mountains. It's so gratifying to see it when it works.
So that's a great story. And you've got clearly what I hear in that is you had leadership, including all the way up to the CEO, completely bought into this, and clearly that had a part to play in why this worked so successfully. So Renee, I'm going to flip now to you. That's a dream situation. How do you help organizations get to that dream state where the CEO and his entire team are bought into that level that allows such a successful story? How do you get through to that level?
Yeah. So, I'm in a Californian state of mind. So, and while Mimi was talking, and by the way, I just want to come back to this. What we're doing, it's not, as you mentioned, Jessica, it's not only for you Fortune 500 companies, right?
Right.
I mean, we work also with small companies and with startup companies and so on. So, but maybe one of the most profound transformations I've witnessed through leadership coaching is with a high-tech company here nearby in Silicon Valley. And I was working closely with the CEO and several members of the executive leadership team. And the impact has been nothing short of remarkable. When I first stepped in, the leadership team was highly capable. I mean, no questions about their talent or drive or their technical knowledge, but they were struggling with alignment. They had competing priorities, a lack of trust, and what I call, they were in a service level collaboration. And this was holding them back from operating as a cohesive, high-performing unit. And through coaching, we started by tackling the big issues. By clarifying their shared purpose and creating space for open and honest dialogue. And it wasn't just about improving communication, it was about building trust. The kind where healthy, and I come back to that, where healthy conflict is embraced, and differences in perspective, they spark innovation rather than tension. And for the CEO, our focus was on leading with authenticity and fostering psychological safety. You hear this a lot with me. Psychological safety, trust, conflict, right, across the organization. And so he recognized that he had a pace-setting type of leadership style. So the kind of do as I do personality. And his natural trait was to lead by example. He set very high standards for himself and expected excellence and self-direction from his team. He established very clear deadlines and demanded accountability. He was driven and energetic and prioritizing getting the job done, even if it meant sacrificing personal commitments or leisure time. And maybe you recognize that type of leadership. Mm-hmm. Well, I do, because I was one of those leaders. Mm-hmm. So this leadership style can effectively meet tight deadlines and navigate high-pressure situations. It can extract significant short-term value. However, on the flip side, it may also lead to team members feeling overwhelmed or burned out. Long-term reliance on pace-setting leadership can, or actually better say, will reduce job satisfaction. It increases stress and decreases overall team morale. And leaders must see the potential consequences of this approach and mix it with a more supportive and nurturing leadership styles. So together, we worked on shifting his approach, less command and control, more listening and empowering. And the ripple effects of that were almost immediate. It was not like 6 months, it was immediate. And one example stands out. During a critical strategic review that we had, where I was shadowing the CEO, the team, which had previously avoided tough conversation, openly started debating conflicting viewpoints. And they leaned into the discomfort. They found common ground and they emerged with a plan that was sharper and more aligned than anything they'd done before. And the results, also immediate. Revenue growth, It's back on track. But more importantly, the culture has shifted. And so the CEO now leads his team with more clarity and purpose, and the team operates with trust and shared ownership. So what began as a leadership coaching turned into a transformation, not just for the CEO and this leadership team, but for the entire organization. And that's the power of coaching. When leaders align, organizations thrive. And witnessing the transformation, or witnessing actually such a transformation, is what makes this work so deeply rewarding.
You know, some of what you discussed in there, and you mentioned this before, this conflict and your embracing of conflict. And, you know, I say all the time, I hate conflict, which is why I love being in a conflict kind of scenario, because I always want to fix it. And I think that bringing people together to allow them to air their position and do it in a way that isn't an email, right? To actually put people together and be able to talk through the scenario and each give their own perspective. It helps each of us in that situation understand that maybe there's a reason why person X was doing something a certain way. And maybe this person over here just didn't understand that that was why. And there may be, as you say, innovative solutions to that the person X couldn't have figured out on their own. So the conflict is able to be resolved because the individual that felt that they were on two different sides all of a sudden are a team to solve a problem. I mean, I've seen this happen all the time. It's the most amazing. I love watching it. It's the most amazing thing. And I think you've sort of described that far more eloquently than I just did. But I so appreciate what you said. I agree. Bring the conflict forward and resolve it, and great things actually can happen from there.
And let's not forget, Jessica, that wherever you have an organization with more than 3 people, you know, conflict happens. Conflict is human. So if we do not have the empathy and the curiosity to talk about it and to listen and to try to understand the other person's viewpoint, you know, why do we work together as a team? Where's the value added? You know, if we are all trying to be complacent with each other, and conflict is healthy, right? I mean, I'm not talking about throwing coffee cups to each other.
Right.
But conflict, we must stimulate conflict. Transformative conflict. It's wonderful.
And in any kind of transformation, because we are unearthing very uncomfortable change that could have potential impact that frightens you. I mean, conflict is almost naturally going to arise. Everyone's going to try to hold on to their own kind of space. Usually, I think that's the natural position.
Yeah. But there again comes it, and you mentioned it. You need safety. You need to be in a safe space where conflict is allowed, where we can have a diverging viewpoint. Diversity is fundamental in organization. That's where, you know, you take all these smart people. They come from MIT, Harvard, Wharton, Stanford, great universities. You pay them tons of money now for them to be whatever, submissive and hide themselves under the desk. That's not smart. That's not making best use of your resources, right?
Mm-hmm. So I want to kind of, as we get towards the end of the hour, I would love to tie this together as we started from the beginning. We're talking transformation and coaching. How do they come together? I think you guys have absolutely painted that picture. But as always, I love to leave these conversations with like, okay, here's my next to do, or here's something that is a nugget that I can use as a listener to kind of help make my business better. And I'm going to ask each of you, we have a little bit of time to kind of give your perspective on what is that one takeaway that each person that is participating in this conversation, what would you wish they could leave here not only thinking about, but almost, I can go try this, and this is going to help move things forward. Mimi, do you have a thought on that?
Well, I guess the thought that comes to mind as you're saying it, Jess, is that I think leadership transformation and systems like coaching are for everyone. they're not for our leaders that are just struggling to make the change. I think that's a really short-sighted idea. Leadership transformation is going to challenge all leaders. All leaders. We're all going to be uncomfortable. We're all going to be struggling with how we balance, all of the competing interests that we have now going forward. We all have to figure out, once we've automated everything, what are we left with in our organization? And the answer is, I think, the most valuable commodity at all, and that's our human intelligence, our human capacity, our human capability. So if we think that those things are true, then leadership transformation is a good thing. And everybody should benefit from help in getting the support that they need to have confidence in leading in this very different environment going forward. And coaching, I think, brings something to the table for everyone, whether you're an early adopter, whether you're somebody that happens to be more resilient, potentially naturally than others. We're all going to have to improve and build new capability around how we manage relationships, not with people that are like us, not with people that get command and control leadership from us. It's a lot easier to do there, with people who we need to bring along willingly, because they trust us, because we're credible, because they're willing to go, on this journey with us. So my takeaway is leadership transformation for all, coaching for all. And I think all boats rise when we get the support and help that we need. And everyone needs to be able to talk to someone.
So really, let me synthesize this in one statement. We all need to leave our ego at the door. As a leader, we need to leave our ego at the door.
Humility, it's an important trait.
It's a hard one sometimes, Mimi, but yes. Okay, great. Renee, last word.
Yeah, thank you. And Mimi, I liked the way you built that line from leaders to humans, right? Because coaching is for everyone. It's for leaders, and obviously we work a lot with leaders, but it's for any human that would like to be coached. And if there's one thing that I would like you to take away is that coaching helps leaders / humans turn challenges into opportunities, and it's the secret weapon that helps leaders cut through complexities with clarity and confidence and purpose. And it isn't just about helping leaders manage change. It's about thriving in it and thriving through it. So remember, resilient leaders inspire resilient teams. Coaching helps leaders build trust. It helps leaders sharpen the focus. It helps leaders drive innovation. So it aligns your personal values with your professional goals, and it creates this foundation for both immediate impact and for lasting success. And that's really, if there's something that the audience would like to take away from today's meeting, then it's this message.
So check our ego at the door, and coaching is our secret weapon. That's what I just got.
Absolutely. Leave your ego at the door. Oh, yeah. And we have egos, right? I mean, we're not going to deny everybody has an ego. But, the question is, when do we allow our ego to show up? And when it's a good moment for our ego to take a step backwards.
Perfect.
When do we add more value to the organizations that we lead? Right?
Good lessons.
Good question.
Good lessons for us all, myself included. Absolutely, probably more than anybody here. I'm gonna fall on the sword on that. Listen, I can't believe it's already been almost an hour. What a wonderful conversation. Really appreciate your insights. For those that are listening in, I do want to mention that Renee and Mimi have made it very clear to me that they are open to you all reaching out to them. If you want to continue this dialogue, you've got questions that we didn't get into today, and you want to learn more, or they can be helped, please reach out to them. Obviously, you'll find them on LinkedIn is probably the best place to go connect. So please, please, please do that. They want to hear from you. I do want to thank our participants for joining us today, but certainly Renee and Mimi for joining me and for having me as your host. It was fun to talk to you both and listen in, and to the Institute for this platform. And my last word is, until next time, you all have a lovely day. Thank you for joining.
Thanks for joining Digital Dialogue. Look for more episodes at noon Eastern Time on the first and third Tuesday of every month. Can't join the live session? You can watch the replay anytime on our YouTube channel.